You know exactly who I'm talking about. You don't even have to think about it. A name just appeared in your head. Maybe it's someone you love. Maybe it's someone you work with. Maybe it's someone you can't easily walk away from. But every time you're around them, something happens. Something you've never been able to fully explain. You walk away from them, and you're not just tired. You're a different kind of tired. The kind that sleep doesn't fix. The kind that makes you wonder, why does this specific person cost me so much? Today, every feeling you have around people who drain you finally has a name. Number 9. Drain soul. There are people who don't do anything obviously wrong. They don't yell, they don't insult you, they don't create obvious conflict. And yet, every single interaction costs you something you can't get back quickly. You leave conversations with them feeling hollowed out. Not from what they said, not from anything specific, just from being around them, from the invisible effort of existing in their presence. That specific exhaustion of certain people depleting you without doing anything you can point to, that's drain soul. The phenomenon of people whose energy consistently pulls from yours rather than adding to it. And the most disorienting part? You can't always explain it to someone else. Because from the outside, nothing happened. But from the inside, you came home with less of yourself than you left with. And you've been doing that every single time you see them. Number 8. Boundary erosion. This one explains something you might have wondered about yourself. You had limits once. Things you wouldn't accept. Things you wouldn't do. Lines you were certain you'd never cross. And then, gradually, with this specific person, the lines moved. Not all at once. That would have been obvious. That you would have noticed, but slowly. One small exception. One overlooked comment. One moment where you let something go because the alternative felt harder. And then another, and another, until the boundary you were certain you had exists now only in memory, and you're not even sure when you stopped enforcing it. That slow wearing down of your emotional limits around a specific person, that's boundary erosion. Psychologists who study interpersonal dynamics describe this as incremental compliance, when small requests gradually normalize larger ones until the original limit seems almost unreasonable by comparison. You didn't lose your boundaries because you're weak. You lost them because it happened so slowly that each step felt like the only reasonable choice at the time. Number 7. Psychic vampire effect. Okay, I need you to think about someone specific while I describe this. You make plans to see them. And even before you arrive, something in you is already bracing, already preparing, already putting on an invisible armor you didn't know you owned. And during the interaction, you're managing something. Their mood, their needs, their reactions, the temperature of the conversation. You're tracking everything, adjusting everything, carrying something they don't even know you're carrying. And afterward, you need recovery time. Not a few minutes, real recovery time. Time alone, time quiet. Time to remember who you are, outside of their orbit. That is the psychic vampire effect. A term used in energy psychology to describe individuals who consistently absorb the emotional resources of others. Not maliciously necessarily, but consistently. Reliably, every single time. Some people give energy to the rooms they enter, and some people take it. You've been in the presence of someone who takes, and you've been paying the bill without knowing you were being charged. Number 6. Empathy fatigue. Here's something important I need to tell you. You're tired partly because of who you are, not as a criticism, as an explanation. You feel things deeply. You pick up on subtleties other people miss. You register emotional undercurrents before they surface. And around draining people, that sensitivity becomes a liability, because you feel their mood before they express it. You anticipate their needs before they voice them. You manage their emotional state before they even know it needs managing. And all of that costs. That specific exhaustion of feeling too much on behalf of someone who takes more than they give, that's empathy fatigue. Documented extensively in research on caregivers, therapists, and highly sensitive individuals. The capacity for empathy is one of the most beautiful things about you, but around the wrong people, it becomes the very thing they drain. You were never designed to be someone's emotional support system 24 hours a day. Number 5. Soul fade. This one takes longer to notice, because it doesn't happen all at once. It happens gradually, quietly, in small degrees you don't register until one day, you look in the mirror and realize, I'm not sure who I am around this person anymore. The things you used to say, you don't say around them. The parts of you that used to show up, don't show up around them. The opinions you used to have, you've learned to keep quiet around them. And slowly, without deciding to, you made yourself smaller, more manageable, more acceptable, less you. That gradual disappearance of yourself around a specific person, that's soul fade. Psychologists call this identity suppression, when we consistently edit our authentic self in the presence of someone who consciously or unconsciously makes our full self feel unwelcome. The frightening thing about soul fade is how long it can go unnoticed. You don't lose yourself overnight. You lose yourself in tiny daily compromises that each feel small and not to justify, until there's not much left to compromise. Number 4. Emotional contagion. You probably know this one exists, but I don't think you know how completely it's affecting you. Emotional contagion is the documented psychological phenomenon of unconsciously absorbing the emotional state of the people around you, not feeling sympathy for them, actually catching their emotion like a cold. Their anxiety becomes your anxiety. Their low mood becomes your low mood. Their irritability starts showing up in how you speak to people who have nothing to do with them. You carry their emotional weather into rooms they've never been in. And here's what makes it so specific to draining people. The more emotionally dysregulated someone is, the stronger their emotional contagion, which means the most draining people in your life are also the ones most likely to transfer their internal chaos directly into your nervous system. You're not just tired from being around them, you're tired from being them for a few hours. Number 3. Gray still. Have you noticed what happens to you after a long time around certain people? Not just tired, flat. The things that usually move you don't quite move you. The things that usually interest you feel distant. The color of your own inner world turns down a few degrees. You're still there, still functioning, still responding, but something is muted. Like someone turned down the saturation on your internal experience. That emotional flatness that follows extended exposure to draining people, that's gray still. The specific numbness that comes not from grief or burnout, but from the slow depletion of being around someone who takes more than they return. Your nervous system is not broken. It's protecting you the only way it knows how. When something keeps costing you, eventually you stop feeling the cost. Number 2. Heartlock. Okay, this one is about what you've done to survive them. Because at some point, without deciding to, you started doing something. You stopped bringing your full self to interactions with them. Not consciously, just you learned which parts of you were safe to show and which weren't. You learned which feelings to mention and which to keep inside. You built a quiet internal wall, not to keep them out exactly, but to keep yourself in. To protect the parts of you that couldn't afford to be seen by them. That unconscious act of locking away your feelings to survive a specific person, that's heartlock. And here's what it costs beyond the obvious. When you heartlock around someone, you practice it, and practiced walls don't always come down when the person is gone. You built a protection that now lives in you, showing up in other relationships, other conversations, other moments where it was never needed. The person who drained you may have left your life, but heartlock sometimes stays. Number 1. Cognitive load drain. And here is the one nobody talks about. The one that explains the exhaustion that has nothing to do with emotion. When you're around a draining person, your brain is working, constantly, tracking their mood, predicting their reactions, calculating what to say and what not to say, managing the conversation towards safety, monitoring the emotional temperature, preparing for shifts, processing everything they say and don't say. All of that is cognitive labor, real measurable neurological work. Researchers studying mental load found that navigating high conflict or emotionally unpredictable relationships consumes the same type of cognitive resources as complex problem solving. In other words, being around certain people is genuinely mentally exhausting. Not metaphorically, literally. Your brain worked hard. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for social navigation, emotional regulation, and decision-making, was running overtime the entire time you were with them. That's not weakness. That's your brilliant brain doing everything it could to keep you safe in an environment that required constant management. You're not too sensitive. You're not overreacting. You are genuinely tired from genuinely hard work that nobody saw you doing. You know who came to mind at the beginning of this video? Maybe you've been wondering if you're being unfair to them, if you're too sensitive, if it's somehow your fault that they cost you so much. It's not. Some people are just expensive, not always on purpose, not always with awareness, but consistently. And knowing that Knowing there are names for every feeling they leave you with doesn't mean you have to make any decisions today. It just means you were never imagining it. What you felt was real, what it cost you was real, and you deserve to know that a long time ago,